When you think of Freemasonry, what comes to mind? Probably the square and compasses, right? But there's this other symbol, one that's absolutely central to a Mason's journey, but it stays almost completely hidden from the outside world. It's called the cable toe, and believe me, it's one of the most peculiar and profound ideas in the entire craft.
So what in the world is a cable toe? Your first guess might be, well, it's just a rope. But its real meaning is so much more complex than that, and it all starts with a very strange fact.
Go ahead, try looking it up. Pull out a standard dictionary. You'll find absolutely nothing. The term cable toe doesn't officially exist outside of Masonic circles. It's a word created for ritual, and its meaning is defined entirely by the craft for the craft. And right there, that exclusivity is our first big clue to just how important it is.
And this tells us something really crucial. I mean, think about it. A builder's square, a stonemason's chisel, those are real tools that were given a symbolic meaning. The cable toe, though, it was created for a totally different purpose from the very beginning.
It's what you'd call a neologism, basically a brand new word. It first pops up in old texts around 1710, and it seems it was coined by early Freemasons specifically for their ceremonies. So, even though it sounds like something from a ship or a construction site, its true home has always been inside the lodge room.
The word itself is kind of built like a rope, It's woven together from these different linguistic fibers. Scholars have pointed out a few. You've got the Hebrew kabal, which can mean both rope and pledge. Then there's the Dutch kabel, an anchor rope, which gives you a sense of stability. And from Old English, you have tuel, meaning to draw or to pull, which hints at being guided, not forced. All these threads twist together to create a word just packed with layers of meaning.
Okay, so while the word cable toe is uniquely Masonic, the whole idea of a sacred cord, well, that's as old as civilization itself. The Masons didn't invent the concept, they just gave it a new home and a new name.
This tradition goes way, way back. In ancient Egypt, you had these priests called rope stretchers who used special cords to lay out the foundations of temples, making sure human work aligned with the cosmos. Later in Rome, when founding a new city, they'd literally stretch a cord to mark the sacred boundary. In both cases, see, the rope wasn't just a tool. It was an instrument for creating sacred space.
And all across different cultures, being bound by a rope has often symbolized this moment of submission and transformation. In the Hebrew Bible, defeated servants would put ropes on their heads to beg for mercy. You see it in medieval Europe, with the citizens of Calais wearing halters to show their total surrender. Even in Hindu culture, a sacred thread binds an initiate to divine law. Each time, the cord is a powerful sign of humility and a signal that you're ready for some kind of profound change.
So, how does Freemasonry take this ancient universal symbol and bring it into its own ceremonies? Well, this is where the cable toe becomes a key player in a really powerful ritual drama.
And what's interesting is, its use actually varies depending on where you are. In English Freemasonry, for instance, the cable toe is mainly a feature of the first degree. The big moment is its removal. It symbolizes that a physical restraint isn't needed anymore once a moral promise, an oath, has been made. But over in American and Canadian lodges, it's often used in all 3 degrees. And there, the number of times it's looped can change, symbolizing either a Mason's growing responsibilities or his decreasing need for guidance as he learns more.
The whole sequence is just this incredible piece of ritual theater. First, the candidate enters blindfolded and bound with the rope, a very physical symbol of his ignorance and dependence. Then, of his own free will, he takes a solemn internal oath. And right after that commitment, the physical rope is taken off and he is brought to light. It's a symbolic rebirth, and the rope acts like a kind of spiritual umbilical cord that's just been cut.
And this really gets to the heart of the symbol. It's not a chain of bondage, it's a lifeline of trust. It represents restraint, yes, but it's also the very thing that connects the candidate to his guide and to the lodge, leading him safely on those first steps toward Masonic life.
Okay, so we've looked at its history and how it's used in the ritual. Now, let's dive into the deeper philosophical meanings that make the cable toe such an incredibly powerful and layered symbol.
You can look at it in at least 4 major ways. First, there's submission, that voluntary act of saying, I'm humble and I'm ready to learn. Then there's the umbilical cord idea. It's your link to the lodge as a sort of symbolic womb, and it's severed at your spiritual rebirth.
It also represents fraternity. Think about it. Lots of weak individual fibers twisted together become an unbreakable cord. That's a perfect metaphor for the brotherhood. And finally, there's mutual responsibility. A rope has two ends, right? It binds the new mason to the lodge, but it also binds the lodge to the new mason.
So that physical act of being bound, it's really just a rehearsal for a huge spiritual transformation. As one Masonic writer so perfectly put it, once that rope is removed, the restraint to the body has given way to the liberty of the spirit. The external discipline is what makes the internal freedom possible.
And this leads us to the symbol's modern and maybe its most important meaning. After the ceremony is over and the physical rope is put away, what's left?
Historically, people actually tried to define a literal length. Some old rituals might say 3 miles. Others mention a specific number of feet. But today, if you ask that question, you're going to get a much more personal answer.
See, a Mason has a duty to help a brother who is within the length of his cable toe. But that's no longer a physical distance, it's a moral measure. The length of your cable toe is simply your ability to help, your own personal capacity to give aid and support. It's a duty that isn't limited by geography, but only by your own conscience.
And that, right there, is the ultimate lesson of the cable toe. The physical rope? It's temporary. It comes off. But the true cable toe, that invisible bond of brotherhood and moral obligation, that's permanent. The rope is removed, but the bond remains, guiding a Mason for the rest of his life.
So in the end, the cable toe is so much more than just a peculiar rope. It's this incredible symbol of submission, rebirth, unity, and a lifelong moral commitment. And it kind of leaves us all with a question to think about, doesn't it? What are the unseen bonds in our own lives? The ties to our family, our community, our principles that guide and shape us long after any physical restraints are gone.